We are live, 3 minutes behind schedule, but pretty good. G'day everyone. We're here to have this, we're having a Facebook Live, as you can see. Today's conversation is around the design of the bike mainly, and we have our core design team, Rob and Sam, which we'll do a bit of intro in a second. So thanks for joining us. My name is Julian, for those that don't know, one of the co-founders and one of currently managing director, I guess. And yeah, I guess my background in this area is did study mechanical engineering back in the day, have worked in building design, other areas of design over the years, and I guess probably 50% of my time I've done design and engineering and done some other things as well. But as you'll find out in a minute, we have a fairly diverse team with a few diverse skills, which is what we find really adds value to the design team. So I guess that's a bit on me. Rob, do you want to talk a bit about your
sure. I'm
background?
Rob. I'm the engineering and production manager, but I've done a fair bit of design in my career as well up till now. So I probably started off doing a fair bit of graphical design and sort of application workflows for user interfaces. Since then, I've moved on to things like more mechanical design of furniture, and I worked for another bike manufacturer making electronic parts and taking them to production in China. So that really helps in this regard. But I've sort of had a dabble at many different sort of
areas
of design.
Pretty into your bikes in general.
Yeah, cycle a lot. So we're all a bit bike.
We all rode today. I think we did. Oh,
Yeah,
you scooted.
No,
Oh no.
put my back out.
It's rare that we're not all coming to work on some form of transport that's not a car, but
And then there's Sam.
Yep. So I'm Sam. I think most of you may have seen a previous video log that I did, but if you didn't see that one, I am an industrial designer. So I largely work with the mechanical design and look and aesthetics of the frame. My background has been mostly, fortunately, working with bicycles. I was lucky enough to work doing some 3D printing with a collab with a local Perth company and the CSIRO, doing some 3D printed titanium bikes, and then I went into doing a custom-made carbon fiber bike company, which was pretty fun. Don't really like carbon around this neck of the woods. It's quite a dirty.
but it's good to have the background with someone that knows about it.
Yeah, so it's a interesting material to work with. Definitely learn a lot working on that, because so much of it is, you can run with what you do on the sheet, but when you work with it with your hands, it's completely different. It always throws a stone on the work. So quite an interesting material.
And you can't recycle it.
You cannot recycle it for anyone at home.
That is one of the questions you might be wanting to pop in the box here. So yeah, look, thank you for the intro, guys. If you are watching at home, feel free to drop a question in the box. We find a lot of people ask questions after the show as well, so we'll answer those when we see them. But at the end of this, we'll have about a 10-minute session if you just want direct anything you want to ask about design and hopefully Tillerides related. So let's get into it. The first bit is, I guess, people want to know a bit about how that bike ended up how it is. The nutshell really is that, I, being one of the founders, and I guess, as I said, we all do ride here, but it's great when you actually ride. We're building a product to be used by us. We all have used them around here. Some people use them to get to and from work, but we don't have enough bikes yet to do that regularly. But the thing is, we basically set out to design a bike that solved all the problems that a traditional bike has. Just simple. We go through a long list, but the simple list is really things like you normally have to charge and carry separate lights. You normally have to carry a whole anti-theft system of some sort, normally a big heavy lock that hangs off your bike and smashes the paint off. You normally have to have a carrier that you put on the back, and once it's bolted on, you can't change it, so you're locked into that. you normally have to have a big, heavy double stand hanging off the bike at the bottom, which makes it unaesthetic. So, that's another barrier to riding. And another one that's often not talked about is if you're going to go out for dinner or go on a date or go to a business meeting, you're not going to ride a bike that looks really terrible. Now, obviously, we have all different views on what terrible is and what stylish is and what's beautiful, but that was a criteria we set. We want to create something that had all these features that made it easy to ride every day for any occasion, but we want it to be stylish as well. So, as you can see, the background here is a lot of people that not only have engineering skills, but also have a view on aesthetics and how to make the bike look a certain way.
I suppose part of that is also the fact that it's electric.
And it's electric. So the electric bit, we actually didn't set out to build an electric bike. We set out to build a bike that made people ride more often. And it turns out, global research, I mean, Australians are only learning this just now, but in Europe, it's sort of been there for 10, 15 years maybe. Electric bikes get people riding more often. So, the idea of riding from here down to the Fremantle tram station, which is 2.5 kilometres, on the electric, you don't even think twice. On a regular bike, you're like, can I feel like doing that today or not? So Rob's got an electric bike. Sam uses our ones. He hasn't an electric one yet. But
Mechanical, baby.
Mechanical.
He lives about a kilometre away.
Yeah, he lives a kilometre
Stone's throw away.
So, but that's another thing that was in that design criteria. So we did all this research. We obviously knew what and as one of the founders of this, I knew the problems I had, but we want to make sure that across the world, these were, because we always thought this might go beyond Perth. Do other people have these problems? And when we did the research, we found, that was the case. And we got a team together called the Design Advisory Group, which was 12 people from a diverse backgrounds, but all used a bike for urban transport. So when we did the first designs, they gave us feedback and said, don't like that feature, can change it to this. And that was aesthetic and functional feedback. So that was the Design Advisory Group. Some of you guys might be watching right now. And then once we bought the first sort of prototype out, the first prototype, which we'll talk about in a second, we actually did customer interviews with it. So people went for a ride, came back, and we did an intense hour conversation with them to see what the feedback was on that. And that didn't have all the features we planned to put in it on it, but at least it gave them a sense of where we're heading. And so all the way along, we've been getting the customer feedback on all the different features. And that's why I think now that we're 3.5 years down the track, we've got a product that when we take it to test rides or markets or whatever, there's a phenomenal response to it because it's not just our ideas, it's actually being developed kind of with the community the whole way. So that's kind of the design process. And I think that's we've had someone email us recently that's called design thinking or something like that. There's actually an official way of, in academia, they'll call it a particular thing, as they like to do. I guess what that led on to in terms of the monocoque frame is that all the features we wanted, once we said, we want a way of blowing the tyres up, we want a big battery. And on an e-bike, you want the battery down as low as possible. We want a place to put electronics. We want to hide all the cables. And once you start writing down those design criteria, the only option we could come up with was this unique frame that you've seen. And we call it a monocoque frame, which is actually French for
Structural skin.
Structural skin, something to do with egg. I think coque is egg, is that right?
Sure.
So something like that. And because that's how an egg works. I think it is. I looked it up the other day because someone asked.
Yeah.
But it's all the structure is, all the forces are going through the skin. And we actually had a lot of people come to us and go, well, where's the frame of the bike? And in fact, when we were originally talking to our Chinese manufacturers, they were trying to add something on, a frame inside the bike because they'd never seen a monocoque frame before. And so there's no such thing as very unique. It's unique, and we haven't seen one anywhere else in the bike industry, especially of aluminium. There is some carbon ones that were around in the racing industry, I think back in the 90s. You can look that up. I think it's called a Lotus. Someone actually just sent one through a couple of days ago on our Facebook page, but it's quite rare. And it's taken a little bit of effort to actually work out how do you make an pressed aluminium frame and take it through the heat treating process, because the frame actually has to be taken up to 520 degrees Celsius and it gets dropped in water. And when you watch it do that, if you just got a sheet of aluminium and did that, it would just crinkle up like alfoil. And we have to do that with the entire bike through the process. So working out how that would work is our intellectual property, but that's what we've had to do over the last 2 or 3 years. So every design change we make has to make sure that it doesn't modify the frame so that it won't be able to survive that heat treating process. So that's one reason why people haven't gone down that line. But I think the key thing for us is we said, this is the features we want. We can't fit that inside a tubular frame, so that's what we had to do. So then I guess going on from that, I'll talk about the first prototype. So, when you're starting a startup, you really can't afford to design or build what you want to build as a final product straight away. You've got to kind of keep doing testing along the way. So back in 2016, we put together a team of around about 16 sort of designers, engineers, those kind of people. They did 5 hours. You guys weren't there, obviously, back then. They're a bit bored right now, but there was a group of people, and they all had to do 5 hours a week minimum until they finished their piece of design. So we met every week. One person worked on a little part of the frame, someone worked on a different bit, and we all used a software that brings all those parts together, so made sure they all fitted together. And then eventually we brought out, after a year's worth of work, the first prototype. And a big part of that year was actually spent trying to work out how to build this frame. So that was sort of prototype one, had what you'd almost call it MVP features. So you could ride it, it was electric, had the belt drive on it, had the rear gearbox on it, had the handlebars sort of the way they are, had lights built into it. We had a simple Arduino controller inside it. So that was like, again, that stuff you can go down to J-Car and buy. And we had a great guy down in Margaret River who did all the electronics for that.
The battery was there.
The battery was there. It didn't lock in or anything, but the battery was there. And the battery then was just a 3D printed plastic shell. So, we were doing any plastic part on the prototype one was 3D printed. So if you look at it, it's got all the lines on it. That's about it for prototype one. Had wheels. And then once we'd finished that, on the back of that, we raised, basically pre-sold a bunch of those. And then because we could show that people wanted the bike and we had all the interviews and all the process we'd been through, we raised kind of $1 million on the back of that. And that's what allowed us to set off and start designing prototype 2.
Yeah, so that's where we came on board.
So that's where these guys joined the team back in early 2018.
Yeah. So just to sort out Jules' first prototype.
Had to come in there and start from scratch.
Yeah, I'm joking. We didn't. It's not entirely true. But the main differences between prototype 1 and 2. One of the main things I was involved in was removing the display. We had just an off-the-shelf display, and we got some guys on board to help us out to remove that display and create our own custom display, which we mounted inside the frame. Sam talk a little bit about the differences in prototype 3, but we had a version of that in prototype 2. It gave us some of the idea of what it would look like, but it wasn't quite what we were after. We played around with a few different options with that one. Some of the other things we did, I think we revised the way that the lights were built into the bike and how they functioned, and some of their how bright they were,
flashing patterns,
how their flashing patterns worked.
So we had a new board. We built our own board.
Yeah, we made a custom circuit board. It was sort of where we're at now. This is prototype 1. We sort of made an intermediate step, did a custom board that a lot of off-the-shelf modules were attached to.
Again, testing concepts, I guess.
Yeah, it allowed us to add a lot more peripherals. So we added a lot more locking mechanisms to the prototype 2. So we had electronic lock for the battery, the rear carrier, I believe.
Yeah.
We added a quick tether, which is that cable lock that comes out from behind the seat post and plugs back into the bike. That in itself, I find, is a bit of a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
It all looks well and good, but once you're actually out there riding a bike, it's really handy to have that.
Probably one of the main features that people say they love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you show them the bike, it's quite unique for a lock to just pull out of a frame.
Mm-hmm.
Just with the prototype 2, we learned a lot, and basically we completed prototype 2 and took all of the learnings and went straight into prototype 3. And
yeah, it was,
just on that, like, just so keeping context here, like, this is not us three. There was, in our studio that we have and workshop, there was up to 15 people doing different parts of it.
Yeah.
So
I think we had about, at one stage, it was about 8 or so designers and engineers all working in different teams on different parts of the bike. And then we had 4 fabricators, I think, downstairs.
Yeah, at times. And all the engineers did often go down and make stuff as well. So we're not like, we've got this team of fabricators and team of designers. We're all very multidisciplinary.
Plenty of late nights down in the workshop.
Fish and chips.
Yeah.
And a lot of different versions of design. So the stuff that you see, if you were ever lucky enough to see the 3 different prototypes, there were, you know, several versions of each part that went that ended up
before the
on
prototype.
bike. So there was a lot of experiments and.
So yeah, when we went into prototype 3, basically because like Rob and I and the rest of the team had all come in on prototype 2, there was a lot of time spent learning, you know, the system and working out, you know, how everything was going to work and fit. And Jules had to do a lot of, you know, going back and forth in between the groups to make sure we were all across what was going on. So I think we finished prototype 2. What month was it?
September, October, I think.
Yeah, it was about October.
It might have been September.
So we spent like almost 6 months doing that. But then once we finished that, we went straight into prototype 3 and we had that out and done by Christmas, which was pretty huge considering the amount of work that went into making that bike.
That was a pretty big step change as well.
Huge, yeah. So
new molds, completely new molds. So all the different components that we had in the bike, you know, most of them in prototype 2, like prototype 1, had been 3D printed in plastic. So we were doing a lot of testing and fitting with the plastic parts. Then we had to kind of do that again with prototype 3, but also like a lot of those we used to then go and order you know, rapid prototype samples from various different places, local machine shops, which is always risky because you make something in plastic and you think, oh yeah, like this works, and then you faced with laying down, you know, sometimes like up to $1,000 or $1,500 on one part from somewhere else, and it's like it's a big decision to go, yeah, lock it in, let's go for it. So. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. So prototype 3, the main changes that came on board with that I was pretty heavily involved with the kickstand. I think that was quite a big highlight. So if you haven't seen already, it's a double leg stand that folds forward and recesses into the frame. Quite a big feat because there's not many or any bikes that really have a stand built in such a way that the whole bike can sit by itself completely upright, even when you've got a child seat carrier or pannier racks on the back. It's pretty stable. On the train.
Jules takes the bike on the train quite often, and you can put it on there and sit down happily on your seat and know that it's going to be stable for the journey. Other features were on the battery. We did a lot of work into really refining the overall look of the bike. So prototype 2. There was a lot of welds and different visible welds.
There's welds, a lot of welds in all of them.
Well, yeah, there's tons of welds in them. There's still lots of welds.
We did look at glowing them.
Yeah. We put a lot more work into really sort of smoothing out the look and making it as nice as it looks today. And some of those were just, you know, creating features where you roll the edges of the metal so they come together really nicely and you don't see that really rough look of the weld. There was a controller switch added at the top of the bike, which has it's multifunctional, so it operates all the different features on the bike, changing the power levels, arming the bike, disarming it. There's a horn built in. It's actually got a USB-C charger, so you can charge your phone if you're using maps while you're riding your bike around. Some really cool tech in there. The big one Rob sort of touched on before was that in Prototype 2, we laid down the schematics for the LED display system. In Prototype 3, we completely refined it and had quite a cool looking like recessed display that comes from underneath the frame. So you just see the lights come up through the little display system that's built into the bike. So it's all integrated.
I believe that was the first time we put in the GPS tracking.
Yeah.
Bluetooth or not? No, we had Bluetooth in the beginning.
Yeah.
GPS tracking.
So Rob was saying we added the GPS tracking to the bike, which is obviously one of our main security features on the bike.
And we've done a bit of work on how you get that signal out of the bike, and also so that it can't be smashed or disarmed by the by a would-be thief as well. So
there was quite a lot of work as well went into the refinement of the rear carrier mechanism. So for us, for the bike, that's kind of a really big point because it's kind of the center console to a lot of the accessories that we have for the back of the bike. At the moment, there's basically the rack is like a universal rack with 2 steel pins that drop in, and that locks out when you arm the bike, so nobody can steal it. But it's to the untrained eye, and from the outside, it's quite simple looking, but there's a lot of mechanics that go into making that, and it's all structural. So we did a whole bunch of load testing on the rear carrier to make sure that if you had, a kid or a heavy or Rob sitting on the back of the bike, or a cameraman.
If you see the crowdfunding video, there's a person sitting on the back of the carrier filming all the road shots.
So it can hold a fully grown adult on the back of that bike, which is pretty crazy.
So just to add in, I think a couple of things is that all through the process, we were thinking, how do we mass produce this part? So for example, the battery ring inside the bike went from being machined out of a piece of round aluminium to being a laser cut sheet that then was rolled into shape. And that means we've already thought a lot of the parts through, like the rear dropouts went from being a CNC machine part to being a cast part. And part of the journey was actually working out how to cast parts ourselves, because to go and get a mold made was too expensive. So we've got this great guy, I won't tell you his name because you might steal his availability, but he's down in Albany and he does a lot of work with us on getting the casting done. So we've sort of moved a lot of the parts as well into the sort of more production level.
And that's probably where we're at the moment. While we say that the bikes are out there and riding around, we're now looking to what tweaks or refinements do we need to do to put this into real production. So when you're doing things in 5s and 10s, it's a bit different to when you want to make thousands of them. So we've got a few tweaks that we need to do, and we're working with our contract manufacturer who will give us some guidance with their experience in metal fabrication and whatnot. So do you guys have anything else to talk about as far as the requirements?
Well, there's a few bits that I know people have been asking for, and they're pretty much in their final stages now. There's front carrier, rear carrier, basket that we've been working on. There's a little storage hatch that we're just about to test out on one of the bikes. Put all the little essentials, tire patch, kit, and whatever in there. A few other minor refinements. Just some, because we've been looking into a lot of the standards, European safety standards. They require some extra protectors around the belt drive system that we have in the bike. So just small minor changes to make sure that we're ticking off all the boxes and covering all the standards that we have.
And there's something like I don't know, this is probably interesting more from a business startup perspective, but when we we started the business with the end in mind. You'll hear people talk about this, but it was really like, this bike is something that could go and sell in Europe. That's where they're all riding these styles of bikes. So we bought the European standard back in 2016, and that determined a lot of what you have to put in the bike anyway. And like what Sam's talking about is you've got to make sure it fits every little bit. And occasionally, and even in some respects, you sometimes want to adhere to the standard, but then go beyond it. Because like right now, I think our belt guard does adhere to the standard, but it still allows dresses to get caught. And so one of the feedbacks is girls want to be able to ride with the dress not getting caught. So we're going to extend it a bit further.
Yeah, and that's sort of what we needed to. The just little bits like that, you can design them to what it's specified on paper, but the benefit that we have of being able to prototype and do things so quickly and have all these people testing the bikes is that we can find out this information right now. And before we even hit manufacture, we've refined a whole bunch of things that we possibly would have got down the track and then been a bit irritated by.
Yeah.
Maria's just asked a question about e-bikes and how regularly are they getting stolen. Stats?
Well, the answer, I don't have actual stats. It's all anecdotal, but pretty much when we're down at test rides, we regularly meet people that say my bike's been stolen. It's not like 1 in 5. It's something like 1 in maybe 100. And they come down to ride our test bike because this is the first one where they've seen a company design in a significant anti-theft system. So the answer is really they are regularly stolen compared to other bikes, and
they are a high value bike.
Yeah.
Typically, electric bikes still have the same standard of security as your regular bike, and regular bikes get stolen all the time. But now it's just the same sort of.
Well, you've got the added, expensive parts in there, and when bike thieves are stealing bikes, they're looking for something that they can divvy up and quickly sell off to.
Or sell a whole bike.
Yeah, sell a whole bike quickly. And
that's actually one thing about our bike is because the frame is the way it is and the parts are the way they are, there's not a lot you can pull off it and sell. And I was thinking about it last night because someone on Facebook asked a question, and really the answer is you can probably sell the front motor and you can sell the rear gearbox, but most of the other bits, you couldn't do much with them on another bike, the valuable bits, because they're unique to the bike.
And obviously with our bike, without knowing how to rearm or disarm the bike, you've got what is effectively a relatively heavy bike to ride around.
And one of the questions we get from people that ride regular bikes is this, like for example, is the quick tether enough? Now, you'll notice there's a hole in the front. How I would describe it, and again, we always debate these things, but if I was to lock the bike somewhere where I thought it might get stolen for like more than, say, 2 hours, and I was going to be more than like a 10-minute walk away or whatever, I'd probably put a heavier lock on it, just to be safe. But the quick tether's job really is to stop the honest people from walking away, or the slightly dishonest people. But the thing is, it's actually the motion sensor alarm, the fact that it's got an alarm and the electronics are dead. The whole bike's basically dead unless you can work out how to unlock it. So even if they were to cut that cable, which on a normal bike, a cable lock's really not enough. But if you were to cut that cable on our bike, you've still got this motion sensor alarm, so you can walk about 3 to 5 meters with it before that'll go off. And then obviously it makes a noise. The bike talks to you and tells you while you're walking it, with the thief, that what's about to happen. So it's not like we're surprised that this thing's got GPS tracking in it. And then you'll be informed on your phone that this is happening and you'll be able to see where it is. So you've got all these things happening that are well beyond what a normal bike would have. This is why we call it the anti-theft system. And then to add to that, you've got all the bikes are registered on the online platform. That's not existing for the public yet, but they're registered. And if you want to buy one, you've actually got to transfer the ownership between people. It's a bit like a car, and the number is not able to be taken off very easily. We'll have to damage the frame significantly to get it off. So you've got all, even that, you can't go and sell it on Gumtree because they'll be able to look up that number and go, well, that's not your name, so you can't really sell me the bike. Now, that's fairly comprehensive. You were going to add something.
I don't
No,
think I was.
all right.
I think you covered it all.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that it's just the fact that you can, like you always see people post on Facebook or whatever, oh, my bike's been stolen, keep an eye out for it. Generally, the police, you file a police report, nothing's ever going to happen with that.
Yeah.
But it'd be so nice to just be able to go, go down to the local cop shop. I'm like, well, I know where the bike is. I just need someone to come and get it. Come and get it with me.
So
once we got your bike.
So I think we're trying to explain it. I mean, obviously a bit of this is an education process because people haven't had bikes with these features in it. But we've, even with our so we probably should just talk a little bit about the beta bikes. Since April, I think it was, we've put 6, but we actually got one here. So we've got 5 bikes on the road regularly being used, and that was really to just get any other finer bugs that we haven't found over the last sort of 12 months to 3 years of regular testing, see if there's any issues.
And it's good. We found stuff.
We found stuff
that we hadn't anticipated, and that's exactly what you do the testing for. So
nothing major.
I wouldn't say anything major. No.
Most of the feedback seemed to be software, from what we had a beta testing session a month and a half ago, I guess it was.
But it's the kind of thing that you want to prove out these things as much as possible before you test it on your actual customer base. It's a bit like you don't want to do a Microsoft and
what's that, Rob?
roll out something
Julian,
and have the general public test it for you.
Yeah,
not to say that that's what they do.
Yeah. Well, some software companies do that, I guess.
It's so valuable having real life testing. Like you can't just buy that and have it instantaneously. You have to do that over time, and we've had now 7 months of real life testing in different scenarios. One of our riders rides to and from work 20 k's per trip on average, and then another rider has a kids trailer that she attaches and takes them down to daycare, and so different kinds of use mechanically and through all the
and the standard thing of people doing things with it which we didn't think they'd do.
Well, that's the whole thing with designers, is that you design this thing for a purpose, and sometimes it's a bit hard to understand what people may do with the thing that you've made. And in some cases we're like, whoa, we didn't think you'd do that to it. And
well, why do you? And like even just the way the buttons, the lights flash, some of it wasn't intuitive, so we've improved that. When we're less concerned about software issues because it'll be updatable through the app, but things like mechanical, and this is a real difference between a tech startup, like a sort of software startup, and a hardware startup. You can't just go out and update this thing simply. So that's why we do all this intense work, which means it takes a bit longer to get the product onto the road, but it actually is, a recall costs quite a bit of money, so you don't want to be doing that. And that's why we won't be rolling the bikes straight out across Australia, because when they come off the production line, again, we want to do an amount of testing before we start growing the business. So, as long as I guess you just you got to be bold and cautious, or what's the word, bold and sensible at the same time, and that's the line we're sort of finding our way through.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe we could talk about where we are now, given all this design in comparison to some of the other offerings in the bike market. Did you have some examples?
I'm reading the sheet. There's some examples down, but
perhaps I can.
You start off with the first one, and I can talk
say in terms of battery. Julian mentioned before that one of the reasons why we went for the monocoque frame is that it allows us more space, and we can position the battery, which is quite a heavy part of the bike, as low as possible, which aids your handling and the stability of the bike. But because we've got this significant space, from our review of the bikes out in the market, we have one of the highest.
Well, as we know, I think.
But I can't think of one unless it's a custom-made one by.
It was 19.6 amp hours now. I can't can't
So say it's 690, something like that, watt hours. And in comparison, most bikes you're looking at around 300 to 500 is what you would get. So for people who don't know, that means basically the more amp hours or watt hours you have correlates to the distance that you can ride the bike. So we're looking at, I get about 80 kilometres off a charge on full power.
In real life.
And I'm not light, for lack of a better word. So I'm 100 kilos, and so most people we would think that they would get further than that.
And I think the other thing with that is that, some people do ask us like how heavy the bike is. It's 25 kilos. We'll probably get some weight reductions in going forward, but it'll probably end up, I think it'll still end up around 24, 25 on the production level. But, we made a choice. We followed what the electric car business is going, and everyone's bigger and bigger and longer range in the electric car game. So we just went, let's put a bigger battery in, but let's put it low in the frame so that the ride of the bike is really beautiful. And anyone who rides the bike, it's unanimous that it's a beautiful ride. So we think we've got the range, and we've got the nice ride. So it handles well.
Yeah, because comments from the weekend was like people were saying that it just feels so solid and nice to ride, not in a heavy way, but it just feels like quality, like that it's all there together.
It's interesting that you could probably add to that. But I rode a bike the other day. People love us to test ride their e-bikes, but the standard tubular frame actually has quite a lot of flex in it. If you actually look at a standard bike, they're designed to flex quite a bit. And this monocoque frame just has this stiffness to it. It's sort of like the SUV of e-bikes in a way. Much as I don't like SUVs because of the fuel use, but like it's got this solid. You're on the road, you feel like a substantial vehicle, and that's a great feeling to have when you're riding amongst cars.
So apart from the size of our battery, which we can all agree is quite big,
yes.
What else are we looking at? What makes this bike?
Well, the anti-theft system we talked about, that's a standout.
And I don't think there's any other bikes that we know of that come close to that.
No, I don't. We know one's has got a GPS tracking system in it, so we can talk about Van Moof, one of our competitors in Netherlands. Don't sell here yet, but they're on the market. They brought out their second model of their e-bike that does have a tracking system in it, but we're not aware that we haven't got one yet to look at, but it doesn't talk to you and tell you what's going on. So people we've seen online have actually stolen the bike. They don't even know there's a tracking system in it. And it didn't appear to shut down the electronics, so they could still ride it around. And then the tracking people, I think they call the hunters or something, go and find these people, and they're completely surprised that they've got this bike, like they bought it off someone for nothing, and that it's got this, they've tracked them down to this
but also, I don't think it has an alarm.
A noise.
Yeah.
And, don't quote us on this, but we've been watching videos because we obviously keep in touch with our competitors.
It does have that particular bike does have a mechanical lock. The
Wheel
wheels will lock,
yeah.
But it doesn't have a cable. Depending on what you think of that, it's quite useful having the cable because you can lock your bike to a physical item.
And you can wrap it around the tyre. And you can
wrap it around the tyre if there's nothing to lock it to. So I think we've got some definite advantages there.
We've got a pretty unique frame, like that's
the style.
Yeah, that's probably like first and foremost the main big feature that you'd see different to other bikes. We look at that frame as being tubular frames have been made basically in the same method for, I don't know, what was your
134 years.
Yeah,
I said 135, but it's actually 134.
They're tubular extrusions that are mitered and welded together at the seams, but you've got a triangle in the center. When you start working with electronics, all the bike companies have just been strapping motors to the traditional mechanical frame. It's a missed opportunity. So we've got a lot of smart tech that we don't want to, get wet, and we want to be able to install them. And it's a great way of integrating it all into one frame and making it nice and neat.
And
intuitive to ride, and
gives us a lot of options as well, like locking mechanisms for the battery, somewhere to store your essentials, inbuilt lights,
sneaky GPSs.
So yeah,
and it's less costly. Like in a way, we're not trying to squeeze things into a small space. We've got a little bit more space, so we've got things to work with. We just noticed some of the other ones, like our competitor Bamboo, if their battery is stuck in the frame, you can't take it out if you go to work. It's in there, and
you can't replace it.
And you can't replace it.
I don't believe.
Well, you can take it to them probably and replace it, but yourself, with ours, you can buy a spare one if you want one, or a replacement one at 36,000 kilometres, and then take it off and you've got a new one, so it's in seconds. So these are little features. Again, it was all part of that original process. What's an essential feature of an e-bike, a normal bike, a form of transport, which is why we're Tiller rides, not Tiller cycles, which is what we were till November last year, because it's all about getting from A to B in a sort of sustainable and healthy way, not creating another bike.
You don't have to be a cyclist.
You don't have to be a cyclist. So we're not really pitching cyclists. We're not members of cycling groups and all that kind of thing. Totally welcome for cyclists to get on board with one. But even me personally, I've got a pedal-powered bike, and I use that on Saturday mornings to go and do some real exercise, like working hard. But the other bike does all the rest of the trips. And interestingly, the research came out the other day and said that from Europe, that if you have an e-bike, on average, you'll do more exercise because you go further and you use it more often. And I've certainly found it that way. But we're not sort of competing with people that want an exercise bike, really. We're competing with their car, and we're competing with the bus, and we're competing with forms of transport like that. So,
all right. Well, maybe we could talk about what are our plans for the future. Where do we go from here?
Significantly over time, but
right.
we'll have to do a short version of that.
Yeah, sure. I know that you can go on for a while.
I can, yeah.
Well, Jules is really good at what do you see the future?
We're talking beyond not just down the track, or we're talking about
next year.
Well, next phase obviously is getting the bikes into production and rolling them out onto the streets. So
heaps of bikes.
Make heaps of bikes, and the short. And we're very agile, so we're not committed to any particular thing beyond that. But if you were to lay it out the way we've currently got it planned, we'll raise this capital now. We'll put the production line in place. We'll roll the bikes out here in Perth for a period until we're comfortable that they're not going to have issues. Then we'll expand across Australia, probably starting in Melbourne. And there's a bunch of people that have ordered bikes, as long as they're prepared to sort of get them early, but also be prepared to ship them back to where they'd be serviced. We might roll them out a bit further beyond Melbourne and Perth. And then the rest of Australia, it all depends on really how much we raise in this round. We'd be happy to expand into other capital cities quicker if we can, once we leave Perth. But really the ultimate goal is getting to Europe. Our style of bike, we can constantly get told, once you start getting it over there, because of that sort of organic style that we've got, we'll get a lot of sales over there, focusing on countries like Holland, Germany, Belgium, and then specific cities where we know that there's a lot of cyclists, such as Copenhagen, Oslo, Stockholm, places like that. So I think that's the kind of immediate future. In that 2-year period, there will be other opportunities that will come up, and we'll take advantage of them.
So once the Roadster's a raging success, what then?
Beyond that, well, we'll bring out a 3-wheeled bike. That's what we don't put a lot of effort into it, but we're often looking at what the next things are. And what you'll find with a 2-wheeled bike is, despite the fact we've put a lot of carriers on it, you can carry at least one child. What happens with a lot of families or people that get a dog is suddenly they're back in the car again because if they have 2 kids. So expanding the range to a 3-wheel bike, 2 wheels at the front with a carriage of some sort is a great opportunity. But then we've also talked about, under the Tiller brand, now that we know how to manufacture things and do all the design process, looking at opportunities like going bigger into the car area, maybe into the scooters, like the Vespa style, or even going down into sort of those the smaller scooters. And we would put a Tiller process through it. We would look at the problems, we would look at what it needs to do, and then we make a beautiful one with the features.
Talk to the
talk to
users.
the market. Yeah. And that'll always be our approach because we think it's going to be successful.
User-centered design.
So the Tiller brand could be any kind of things that satisfy that sort of sustainability goal of reducing the footprint and improving people's sort of quality of life and health and well-being. So,
As a last little question, different colours, Jules? Any pink ones coming out soon? We've had a lot of people ask for Ferrari red, but
a lot,
well,
a few.
Yeah.
The colour one is always a bit of a challenge. I personally do like colour. If you see my clothing range, it's often got colours, my shoes. But the reality is, if you're trying to produce a bike at cost, if you go for too many colours, every colour you get that someone likes and other people just dislike it. So at this point, we're sticking with what we call the classic colours. We don't have a lot of people actually saying they wouldn't buy it. We don't have anyone who said they won't buy it because of the colours, but that say they would like a different colour, they're quite happy with it. But one day, who knows? We may bring out limited edition ones. You know, we've got a few ideas on that front. Yeah, there'll be something. I mean, stay tuned, but we won't be bringing out 15 colours or whatever. So we'll play that by ear. But right now, we're focused on getting the bikes into production. We chose colours. There's a chance we could do something like silver, which we might add to it. But at this point, it's black and white. And we've roughly got orders of about 50-50, as in percentage-wise. So, yeah.
I think we've answered the sole question that was
yep.
answered there.
So again, we've noticed there's a lot of people tuning in but haven't asked questions. If you have any, you can. It's probably a bit late now, but put them down, and one of us you can actually direct it to one of the three of us if you like, and we'll get back to you on that soon. Is there anything else we wanted to?
No, it's just pretty much wrapping up now.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to get in touch with us, they can post a comment below, or if they have a specific question, they can email us at ahoy@tillerrides.com.
AHOY.
Did you mention about our current
investment?
Yeah, with virtual. So about 19 days to go in our investment campaign. I'm not going to say too much because I don't keep up to date.
Yeah, so you're not working on that.
I'm usually downstairs.
Yeah. So basically, look, there's an opportunity to buy a part of Tiller Rides at the moment. So you can actually be a shareholder in the business. We've done it through a thing called equity crowdfunding. So you can invest as little as $250. And one of the reasons we do that is that our whole future is about a rider community. So we want a whole bunch of people that riding these bikes. We're planning to sell the bikes through the rider community, so people can make a bit of money through that process, a bit like the Airbnb Thermomix model, we call it. And the whole idea then is that if you want to own a part of the business, you can come on board now. So the opportunity to be like what they call a retail investor under $10,000 and own part of Tiller Rides, there's a good chance that'll never happen again. So in the next 21 days, we need to raise enough money to get into production. If you'd really like to see this happen, it's a fairly bold and ambitious thing to do for a company here in Australia. Lots of people doing software in Australia, not a lot of people doing hardware like what we are. As they say, hardware is often a bit harder, but some of the biggest companies in the world are hardware manufacturers. So certainly the goal is to obviously become a very big company, and the shares that you would buy now will grow with that. So obviously there's risk involved. So if you look at everything we do, we're very clear in saying that it's still a startup. We're 3.5 years down the track, so we're not sort of just dreaming of the ideas. We're sort of probably about 6 months away from producing revenue into the business, which is a big step for a business. And so the risk level has significantly decreased over the last 2.5 years. But you can buy shares right now. If you want to get rewards, you can get a 50% off a Roadster at $5,000. You get a free Roadster at $10,000. And if you're a sophisticated investor, you can invest up to sort of quite a bit, but at $50,000, you can actually get 2 Roadsters. At the 100, we're actually going to do some bikes with a unique artwork. I'm looking at Rob because that's his idea, and he's got lots of friends that will be into that.
I'll have a go at it.
I think we've currently pre-sold, I think 116 Roadsters in total already. So there's there's 116 people I know at least that are pretty
They
eager
wanna
to
buy?
get these bikes in.
And another
so
around
we're
about
there.
50 through the rewards scheme.
Oh, yeah.
So
Nice.
there's already 30 plus, I don't know the exact number because I haven't looked in the last 5 days, but 30 plus people have invested the 10,000 range. So that's really awesome. It shows that people really want the investment and want the product, which is really what we want. So get on board, look at virtual. If you go to our website, there's a page called Invest. If you click on that, you'll see the details. The investment video is really, really good. Gives you a lot of information on it. I do obviously star in it quite a bit, but it still is very good. And yes, well, I'm not saying it's good just because.
Well, it's good because we're in it.
Oh, yeah,
Everyone's in
We've got
it.
to bring up the level as well as we can.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we've all been involved in it, but it's certainly the next goal of the business. So if you know anyone who wants to get involved in that, and show them this video, because often people want to know, is this product well designed? Maybe this gives them a bit of a sense of that. So I think that's it for today.
What about the next live session?
Oh yeah, go for it, Rob.
Well, yeah, okay. Next live session is going to be Thursday, 24th of October, 5:30 again, Australian Western Standard Time. This session will be on marketing, the Roadster, and it will include our digital marketer Emily Lloyd and Julian.
So everything you see coming out from Tiller Eyes, including these instructions down here on what we are talking about
Always
today,
comes from Emily.
Emily comes from Emily.
Yeah.
You can
And,
tell that we clearly have read this like about 15 minutes before the.
But we don't need to because she prepares for us. And the great thing about, when you look at our digital marketing, which is obviously a big part of what you do when you're putting a product out in the market, apparently we're doing very well. So there's probably some good things to be learnt from having a chat to Emily on the 24th. So I'll tie that up. I have to go out very, very shortly. And
send through any questions if you had any. We'll get to them on Facebook as soon as we can.
okay,
Thanks, guys.
thanks very much.
See you later.
Good night.
Bye.
That's wise.
Oh, we're still here.